Welcome to Sleepy Scientist Stories, a quiet place for drifting minds and curious hearts. As you close your eyes or lie still beneath the hush of evening, let your breath match the rhythm of the cosmos. Tonight we begin with a silent visitor from beyond our star, a mystery reborn. Something new has entered our solar system, fast and unannounced, stirring memories of that first strange object, Oumuamua. It moved like no comet we've known, left no trail, carried no sound. Now, something like it has returned. Was it natural, or crafted, or something else entirely? In this story, we won't rush for answers. We'll drift slowly through the questions, floating beside astronomers as they catch a glimpse, again, of the impossible. What comes from the stars without warning, and what might it mean that it's come again? You lie still beneath a quiet sky, your breath soft, your thoughts beginning to drift. There is no sound, no urgency, only the endless hush of space stretching above you. Stars shimmer without asking to be noticed. The moon glows with its familiar gentleness. Nothing seems out of place, and yet, somewhere far beyond the comfort of this night, something moves. You do not feel it at first, neither do the astronomers, whose telescopes sweep the heavens like hands brushing through a dream. But then, a flicker, a light, a path that does not follow the rules, a line across the sky that should not be there. No orbit, no return, just motion, quick and quiet, like a whisper that drifts into the room after the speaker has gone. You do not know what it is, no one does, but you feel it. A shift in the stillness, a ripple in the long silence of the stars. Something is arriving. Telescopes capture it again, this time on purpose. It is fast, faster than anything bound to the sun. It enters and does not slow. It is not circling, it is passing through. You imagine the feeling of something from outside our solar home, crossing through as if the planets and moons were nothing more than leaves floating on a pond. And this object, this speck, is the wind. Scientists begin to measure. They calculate trajectory, brightness, speed. They notice what it does not have. No coma, no trail of ice or gas, not a comet. But it is not an asteroid either. Its shape is unclear. Its spin, erratic. Its story untold. It has a name now, but not yet. Right now it is only a visitor without a passport, without history, slipping across the celestial border without slowing down. You breathe deeply, listening to the quiet pulse of this discovery. The object moves through numbers, through models, through equations that try to place it into a box that does not yet exist. Nothing fits. So the sky remains open. You are reminded that space is not a static dome, but a moving sea. Most things drift with tides we understand, planetary gravity, orbital rhythm. But this object dances through those patterns like it hears a different song. It does not come from the asteroid belt, nor from the frozen reaches of the Kuiper edge. It comes from somewhere else, beyond. Interstellar. The word is almost too large for the mind to hold, and yet it fits this moment perfectly. You picture it now. A lonely traveler shaped by another sun, another story, carried across light years to arrive here, not to stay, not to speak, only to pass. The astronomers give it a name, Oumuamua, a Hawaiian word meaning a messenger from afar arriving first. You sit with that name for a moment, feel its rhythm. Oumuamua. It does not demand, it doesn't claim, it simply arrives. And you begin to see the universe not as a place of emptiness, but as a place of constant arrival. Not all messengers come with messages. Some are messages themselves, carved in silence, moving with purpose no one yet understands. You wonder if someone, somewhere else, is watching it too, from another sky. If this object passed their world before yours, if their breath also caught in wonder, if the stars felt closer, just for a moment. And as you lie back into the stillness, your eyes tracing invisible paths through constellations, you realize something gentle, but immense. This was not a mistake. The sky did not break its silence, it whispered. And you heard it. Now the story opens, and as you breathe, slow and soft, you prepare to follow that whisper into the next question. What kind of name can hold something we don't yet understand? You wake to a soft murmur in your thoughts, still wrapped in the wonder of what passed through the sky. It had no voice, yet it spoke. No light, yet it was seen. Now it is time to give it shape, not with measurements or shadows, but with a name. In Hawaii, where the object was first observed, a word is offered. You hear it carried through the air like a song, syllables smooth and slow. Oumuamua, a name that means a messenger from far away, arriving first. Not just a visitor, but a forerunner, a scout, a presence from beyond the known, moving with no map, asking for no welcome. You say the name again, softly, and it fills the quiet between your breaths. Oumuamua. Names can soften the strange. They turn a mystery into a story you can hold gently in your hands. The scientists who tracked it needed something to call it, a label to place in records and calculations. But in choosing Oumuamua, they also invited meaning into the science. You understand this deeply, even if you've never named a star. A name not only identifies, it holds. It remembers. It frames what was once beyond you in something human and small enough to say aloud. This object, spinning through the solar system without orbit or echo, now has a sound, and that sound begins to root it in our imagination. It still defies understanding, but now it is no longer anonymous. It becomes a story we are telling, once we have joined. You think of how names pass through time like signals. Ancient constellations still bear the voices of cultures long gone. Each star with a name becomes part of something shared, something watched and wondered at. You imagine Oumuamua drifting through other systems before ours, unknown and unnamed, silent across uncounted skies. But here, in this moment, we saw it. We named it. We placed it in our story. And somehow, that changes everything. It is no longer just a rock, or a shard of nothing. It is now a character in a cosmic tale, one that moves quietly through equations, through art, through the hush of people listening late at night. Even the official designation tells a story. 1I 2017 U1, the first interstellar object ever recorded by humanity. A marker of its uniqueness, a symbol that we are finally looking far enough, deep enough, to notice the passers-by. You lie there and think of what it means to be the first to arrive, the first to be named, the first to remind us that we are not isolated in this pocket of space, that other stories are unfolding out there. Not all of them belong to us, but some of them, briefly, pass through our world. Oumuamua is one such story. You sit with the silence of it now, this object from beyond the stars that moves but does not shine. It spins, but it leaves no dust behind. It glides without sound, without a trail, without the glowing tail that would mark it as a comet. Your body, resting in calm, follows the rhythm of its mystery. Comets are known for their luminous behavior. When they near the sun, ice turns to vapor, gas streams behind, forming long tails like cosmic flags. But this visitor shows none of that. Astronomers peer through lenses and data, waiting for light to bloom from its path. But light does not bloom. Dust does not appear. There is no icy breath trailing behind it. It doesn't behave like any comet they know, and so they consider another label, asteroid. But asteroids are rocks, dense, heavy, often jagged pieces of ancient collisions, orbiting in belts or drifting through planets' paths. This object is not that either. Its brightness flickers too dramatically, its shape is too strange, its spin too chaotic. It does not belong to the categories we've named. You float in that ambiguity, feeling what it means to witness something that refuses to be known. Like a dream you can't fully remember, its presence is real but slippery. You reach, but the meaning glides just ahead. Scientists begin to whisper that this might be the first of its kind, or perhaps not the first at all, just the first one we noticed. You close your eyes and imagine the long history of sky watching. How many eyes have scanned the heavens, missing visitors like this one? Oumuamua moved fast, faster than anything bound to our sun. It came and left before most knew it had arrived. You imagine yourself lying in the grass 100 years ago, looking up, while this very object might have passed above. There is a kind of comfort in that even now, mystery survives. The universe still holds surprises that cannot be sorted, filed, or explained on arrival. You breathe that in, like cool night air. Scientists run simulations, trying to match their behavior to known patterns. Could it be a broken comet, its outer ice burned off long ago? Could it be a fragment from another solar system? Debris launched by some ancient catastrophe? The answers drift, just out of reach. The data tells us where it went, how fast, and how it spun. But not what it was. You begin to sense the difference between information and understanding. One gives shape, the other gives meaning. This object offers only the first, the rest you must feel. Like standing in front of a painting with no title, letting color and shadow speak where words cannot. In science there is honesty. Researchers publish papers that conclude, we do not know. And that too is part of the process. Not knowing is not failure. It is the fertile ground where all wonder begins. You lie quietly now, letting your mind wander through space, tracing the path of this visitor. Not a comet, not an asteroid, something else. something that opens a doorway in your thinking. You do not rush to close it. You let it stay open, wide and slow. And in that openness, you begin to feel the gravity of curiosity, not as a burden, but as a gentle pull toward the next question. What does it mean for an object to belong to nothing we've named? Could it be part of a new category? Could there be more like it? Your thoughts drift not toward answers, but toward possibility. In the sky, just beyond what we can explain, the unknown drift. As you drift too, into the calm of sleep, you feel a thought forming. Soft, slow, unfinished. If it moves like nothing we've seen, then what other rules might it quietly break? You lie in stillness, your body soft as night, and imagine something far away. A shape not glowing, not roaring, but drifting gently through the dark. You expect motion to be smooth, predictable, like the planets orbiting in their quiet loops. But this object, Oumuamua, does not move like that. It spins strangely, like a shard of light catching in a breeze that doesn't exist. It tumbles end over end in a way that seems almost casual, almost playful, as if it doesn't care to follow the lines we've drawn in the sky. You picture it twisting slowly, not as a spacecraft would, not as a comet would, but in its rhythm, shaped by something we don't yet understand. This is not chaotic. This is not clumsy. It is unfamiliar. And unfamiliar things often teach us more than the ones we know. Scientists tried to model its motion. They expected it to rotate in a steady, predictable way. Most things in space do. But Oumuamua didn't. Its light fluctuated in a pattern that made no simple sense. It grew brighter, then dimmer, but not in the rhythm of a spinning ball. It was more like a wobble, a kind of cosmic tumble, uneven and yet repeated. You think of a leaf falling, flipping over and over, but still drifting in a clear direction, or a feather spinning in the air, touched by invisible currents. But space has no air, no wind. So what was pushing it? What was guiding its dance? You close your eyes and feel the slow pull of that question. Its motion wasn't just strange, it was unexpected, in more ways than one. After it passed closest to the sun, Oumuamua didn't simply coast along on the curve gravity had drawn. It sped up. Just a little. Just enough. In comets, this can happen. Ice turns into gas near the sun, and that outgassing acts like a gentle rocket. But Oumuamua showed no signs of that. No tail, no jet, nothing visible. Just a quiet acceleration, a shift in pace. You think of someone walking faster, not because they were told to, but because something inside them said it was time to move. You lie with that image, a silent change, a self-directed glide. The idea of non-gravitational acceleration, that something other than gravity pushed it, is not science fiction. It's math, observed, measured, published. And yet the absence of a visible cause leaves a space open. In that space, scientists step carefully. Some suggest it's thin layers of gas escaping from inside. Others wonder about radiation pressure, the push of sunlight itself on an extremely thin, perhaps pancake-like shape. You hear terms like solar sail and your mind opens slightly wider, not to leap to conclusions, but to wonder what else moves in this way. What else might travel not to burn, but to drift, not to land, but to pass through. A bird glides, a leaf flutters, a fish sways, a human walks upright, left, left. Every motion tells a story. Oumuamua's motion tells one too, but it is not a story we've heard before. It is a new kind of sentence in the grammar of the cosmos, and we're still learning how to read it. You feel the humility in that, how we study the sky not with certainty, but with questions. And questions keep unfolding. Could its spin be the result of a past collision? Could it have been ejected from a distant planetary system, spinning ever since? Or is its motion the signature of something designed, something shaped to travel vast distances, turning to balance, to signal, or to stay stable? You don't rush to answer. You stay in the wonder. Because here, in this space between facts, is where curiosity grows best. Not everything needs an explanation. Sometimes it's enough to notice, to feel the way mystery hums quietly beneath data. Lying still, you begin to feel that movement within yourself, not spinning or tumbling, but shifting. A recognition, a soft awareness that even in your still body, your thoughts are in motion. You are turning ideas over like stones in the palm of your mind. This is the movement science honors, not just in telescopes and equations, but in the quiet shifts of human imagination. You picture Oumuamua's path again, its tilt, its lean, its wandering dance. Not lost, just free. You realize something else too, that strangeness is not danger. In the quiet of your breath, you sense how much we fear what doesn't fit. But the sky is not made of categories. It is made of moments like this, when something doesn't align and we're forced to see the world anew. Oumuamua's motion isn't wrong, it's different. And the difference is what discovery feels like before it has a name. And so you lie back, eyes closed, heart quiet, and drift with the object, not into answers, but into movement. Into a kind of understanding that doesn't solve, but soothes. That says, even what we don't yet understand has its place among the stars. You imagine it now, not as an object but as a question, folded in light, moving through the void like a whisper with no voice. It does not gleam the way stars do or shimmer like a comet's tail, but reflects light in uneven pulses, dimming and brightening as it tumbles end over end. You wonder what shape could cause such rhythm, such unpredictable flickers from the edge of knowing. Scientists trace its brightness like breadcrumbs, trying to guess its form not from shadow or outline but from glimpse alone, each shimmer a clue, each silence a puzzle. The more data they gather, the stranger it becomes. Not round, not symmetrical, not shaped like anything we've held or seen. No sphere, no rock, not even a lopsided snowball like the comets we know. Perhaps long, impossibly long, like a needle gliding through interstellar dark, or maybe flat. Pancake flat so thin it turns into light's gentle pressure. You feel how hard it is to know something that gives no full view, no full shape, only moments of reflection that change with each turn. And as you lie still, you feel the idea of it slide softly through your thoughts, like a blade through water, slicing gently but leaving no wound, only ripples of curiosity. If it is long, then it spins like a baton, end over end, slow at first, then faster. If it is flat, it could be turning, like a coin caught between two fingers, flipping as it falls through vacuum. Some say it could even be hollow, shaped not by chance but by choice. Your mind pauses there, not to leap toward aliens, but to feel the weight of not knowing, the sacred tension of mystery. Shape is a story. This one refuses to be told in straight lines. Each observation suggests a new possibility. Some scientists model it as 10 times longer than it is wide, a cosmic shard. Others propose a disk so thin, it disappears when edge on. You think of things here on Earth that shift form as you change perspective. A sheet of paper turned sideways, a piece of glass glinting only when caught just right. You begin to understand that in space, shape is not only what a thing is, but how it moves, how it meets the light, how it reveals itself only through interaction, not directly, never all at once. Oumuamua, as it's named, gives only flashes, glimpses from behind a curtain drawn too fast, as if the universe is hinting but not yet ready to show. You imagine this object not as a thing hurtling blindly but as something with quiet intention, turning as it drifts, reflection as it passes, not speaking but still saying something in each change of brightness, each pulse like breath, like blinking. You feel that, the flicker, the dance, the refusal to settle into certainty. Even when we calculate, even when we model and render and simulate, we are left only with approximations, best guesses, and sometimes wildly different ones, and that is beautiful. That many possibilities can live in one question. That disagreement among scientists is not failure, but a kind of music, each idea playing a different note in the same wonderfully chord. You drift with those thoughts, wondering if the shape even matters in the way we think it does. Maybe the point isn't whether it's cigar-like or pancake thin, but that it does not belong to the shapes we've cataloged. It stretches the boundary of what we thought was out there. And in that stretch, our minds stretch too, like muscles waking from sleep, like wings remembering how to move. The shape may be strange, but the strangeness invites attention, deepens focus, like a riddle that doesn't frustrate but soothes. Some knowing is felt in uncertainty itself, like hearing the echo of a voice through a wall and knowing someone is there. You let that be your comfort now, as your body settles deeper into rest, your breath softening to match the rotation of a thing untouchable, unseen, unforgettable. Somewhere in the darkness above it continues turning. Not lost, just turning. And the light it reflects may never show you its full form, but it has shown you something just as rare. The joy of looking with eyes wide open and not needing to see it all at once. As you float in that thought, you think of how often we rush to name, to capture, to define. But sometimes the world offers you something that does not wish to be held. Only witness, something that lives in the moment, between categories, in the space where ideas shimmer but do not settle. As you listen to the sound of your own breath, you imagine that shape still gliding, turning gently, indifferent to definition and yet somehow deeply intimate, like a secret only space and light can share. You lie quietly now, wrapped in stillness, breathing slowly, gently, as if syncing yourself with something far beyond. And as your thoughts begin to float outward again, you return to the strange traveler Oumuamua, drifting between the stars, moving not as expected, not just in a line carved by gravity but with a whisper of acceleration that should not have been there, a change in speed not accounted for by the pull of planets or the bend of sunlight. Something subtle but measurable, small but undeniable, and as astronomers looked more closely, tracked its path, modeled its curve, they saw that it was not simply falling through space, it was changing course. Just slightly, just enough to raise questions that wouldn't settle, just enough to bend the rules. And in science, even the smallest bend can open up a canyon of possibility. A silent shift in speed that echoes across assumptions, a gentle push that no one could trace, and so the question began to form. Was it pushed? And if so, by what? Or by whom? Or by what unknown part of nature we have yet to name? And this question, soft at first, began to grow. And you lie there now, cradling it like a smooth stone in your hands, feeling its weight but not its edges, because this acceleration was not explosive, not loud, but soft and steady, as if something nudged Oumuamua from behind, as if something invisible exhaled beneath it, guiding it on a path ever so slightly askew. And that thought leads you deeper into wonder, because in our known universe, objects that move without force are rare, and when force is found, we seek its source. We look for jets of gas, trails of vapor, signs of melting ice, the exhaust of comets that burn off their icy skin when the sun gets close, creating tails of dust and light, the breath of ancient snowballs flung from distant belts. But this object had no such signature, no visible tail, no dusty plume, no radiant stream curling out from behind, only a path that did not match gravity alone. And so the question lingered. What kind of push leaves no trace? What kind of force leaves no fingerprint? And some scientists suggested it could be hydrogen outgassing, an invisible plume of molecular hydrogen that wouldn't shine or scatter light, but could offer just enough pressure to alter the course, while others pointed out that this would require a structure so fragile, so porous, it would disintegrate long before such gas could steer it. And still others reached for the pressure of sunlight itself, radiation pressure, the gentle push that photons deliver, the same force that powers solar sails, those thin sheets of engineered light catchers that ride the sun's energy like wind. And for this to be true, Oumuamua would have to be extraordinarily thin, wide, and light like a sail. Not solid rock, not ice, not a natural chunk of debris, but something more delicate, more precise. And so the theories diverged. Was it a shard of interstellar ice, a sliver of alien technology, a fragment of cosmic paper folded and released, or something else entirely? Something from a class of objects we have never named, never seen, never imagined until now. And you let your thoughts stretch into that possibility, not to claim answers, but to feel the space that opens when certainty is removed. Because being pushed implies interaction, and interaction implies contact, and contact leaves behind ripples, echoes, consequences. And yet here, there were none we could see, only this. The math doesn't add up, and when math doesn't add up, science listens carefully, and in that listening, the whisper of something new emerges, not loud, not boastful, but real, and it invites you now to lean in, to imagine a universe where not every motion is explained, not every object obeys the rules we've written, a universe that still surprises, still contradicts, still folds its mysteries in starlight and lets them pass silently through the solar system, leaving only questions in their wake. And you lie back deeper, letting the idea wrap around you like mist, not needing it to be more than what it is. An anomaly, a deviation, a gentle push from nowhere, and the thought arises, could it have been intentional? And your heart stirs slightly, not from fear, but from awe, because intention suggests purpose, and purpose suggests intelligence. And intelligence suggests that we are not alone. But again, you pause, because that leap is wide, and the data does not say it, only allows for it. And so you float between the possibilities, the natural, the engineered, the unknown. And you begin to understand that sometimes the question is more important than the answer. That in asking, was it pushed, we are not just measuring velocity, we are measuring our own readiness to face what might lie beyond. We are testing our ability to accept strangeness without fear, to meet mystery not with dismissal but with wonder. And you think of all the other mysteries we once feared. Lightning, magnetism, the movement of planets, and how they too were once anomalies, unexplained nudges in the sky, and now they are familiar, understood, folded into the books and classrooms of the world. But before that, they were sacred questions, and perhaps Oumuamua is one of those. Not sacred in a spiritual sense, but in the way all questions are sacred when they touch the edge of what we know. And you lie there with that thought, breathing slowly, letting it settle into your chest. The idea that something can come from far away, pass through our sight, move strangely, and leave us changed. Not because it spoke, not because it stayed, but because it moved differently. And we noticed. And in noticing we were pulled too. Not in speed or direction, but in imagination, in curiosity. And now, as your breath softens and your thoughts begin to dim, like the final glow of Oumuamua's fading light, you realize that the most powerful pushes are not always physical, not always visible. Sometimes they are questions, small and quiet, that steer our understanding just enough to open a new path. And maybe that is the true motion of this object, not just through space but through our minds, pushing gently at the edges of what we believe is possible. And now, as your eyes begin to close and your body feels weightless in the dark, you feel the shift within, not of speed, but of direction, a soft realignment toward wonder, and you float with it, letting it guide you not toward answers, but into the beautiful uncertainty that always follows the question, what if? You lie still and quiet, breath slow and long, as the question begins to rise again. Not loudly, not suddenly, but with the slow rhythm of something ancient. Was it natural or not? This strange visitor from the stars, this object that came without a signal, without a name, and left behind more questions than answers. And you begin to trace the two possible stories, each one stretching into its own kind of vastness. Because if Oumuamua is natural, then nature itself is more surprising than we imagined, able to shape things not just into planets and comets and moons, but into long, thin, tumbling things without tails, without trails, without melting or glowing, things that spin strangely, accelerate slightly, and vanish completely. And if it is unnatural, if it was made, then something made it, something somewhere in the deep sea of stars, and maybe it wasn't meant for us, wasn't meant to be found. Maybe it's just a fragment, a shard of technology flung across interstellar space by time or chance or collapse, and you feel how both stories pull at you, both beautiful, both heavy with wonder, and neither one easy to believe, because the truth sits just out of reach, behind numbers that don't match expectations, and motion that refuses to explain itself. And you think of how scientists tried to model it, tried to match its spin with known physics, tried to trace its path through light curves and brightness changes, and still found themselves wondering, what is this? How did it get here? And why does it behave the way it does? And you understand now that even in science, the unknown is not a failure. It is a space of invitation. And this question, natural or not, is one of the most profound a species can ask. And you feel the weight of that, not as pressure, but as wonder. Because if it is natural, we may be seeing a new kind of interstellar object, something forged not by life, but by physics, by collisions and tides and long-forgotten violence, shaped in darkness and flung between stars like a drifting seed, a message not of language but of origin. And if it is unnatural, then we are not alone in building things, not alone in shaping matter into meaning, not alone in sending things out into the void, and both possibilities echo into you, soft but endless, and you lie there between them, feeling how even silence can speak, how even one object can hold 1,000 meanings. And you recall how Oumuamua accelerated slightly after it passed the sun, just enough to raise eyebrows, just enough to break predictions, and scientists looked for reasons, jets of gas, outgassing like a comet, but found no visible tail, no cloud, no trace. And so some suggested maybe it was hydrogen ice sublimating, invisible but still enough to push it. while others pointed out that such ice would not survive the journey, that it would vanish long before entering our sight. And still others turned to light pressure, the soft push of sunlight on a very thin object, like a solar sail. And that meant something almost impossibly thin, wide like foil, strong enough to survive the journey, light enough to be nudged by photons. And then came the question, was it debris? Was it a sail? Was it a fragment of technology, left behind or discarded or broken from something greater? And you don't leap to conclusion, but you also don't dismiss them, because wonder lives in the space between certainty and imagination. And you rest there now, not afraid of not knowing, not rushing to name, just letting the question rise like mist. And you think of how once, long ago, we did not know what meteors were, thought comets were omens, thought lightning was anger, and yet all of them had explanations waiting to be found. And perhaps this too is explainable, someday, with better tools, better models. Or perhaps it is the beginning of something new, a new class of object, or a new clue. And you listen to the quiet in your room, the gentle hum of breath and thought, and you feel the way this question, even without an answer, makes your world larger, more delicate, more alive with possibility. And you think of the stars it may have passed, the systems it crossed, the darkness it endured, and the time it drifted, maybe millions or billions of years before falling into our sight. And you understand now that the universe does not send messages in envelopes. It sends them in events, in anomalies, in brief interruptions of the expected. And we are the ones who must slow down enough to listen, to feel, to wonder. And so you lie there now, heart open, mind still, and let the question continue, not as something to solve, but as something to carry, like a soft stone in the pocket of your thinking. Because the story of Oumuamua is not over. Not because it will return, but because it left us changed, more curious, more willing to ask. And now you drift further inward, floating in the thought that not every story has a closing line, and not every answer must arrive to make a question worth asking. And so you rest there, in that space, natural or not, ready to go deeper. Oh, you lie quietly, your body gently sinking into stillness, your breath soft and rhythmic, as if tuned to something larger, something vast and unseen. And in this hush, a new idea begins to stir, not as a sound or a flash, but as a presence. The presence of something that passed and left almost nothing behind. And yet, its silence is louder than most things that scream. Because Oumuamua, the first known interstellar visitor to drift through our solar system, did not roar across the sky, did not glow or blaze or streak. It did not send signals, did not spin wildly or shatter apart. It simply came, moved strangely, and slipped away, leaving no trail but the quiet echoes in our minds. And that is where the story unfolds, not in photographs or spectra, but in the gaps, the things it did not do, the signals it did not send, the silence it wrapped around itself like a veil. And you begin to understand that sometimes what is absent tells the truest story, because this object, with its flickering light curve and mysterious acceleration, should have behaved like something we know, a comet perhaps, or a piece of rock spun from a distant star system. But it didn't, and that small deviation became a doorway to a different kind of listening, the kind that hears through stillness, the kind that notices when the expected does not arrive. And so scientists watched closely, read its silence like a subtle language, and what they found was not confirmation, but curiosity, not definition, but divergence. And in that divergence, a kind of wonder, because Oumuamua did not fit, not into our models, not into our lists, not into our tidy categories of what space should contain. And so we were left with questions, suspended like stars in the dark. And you feel that now, how the shape of a mystery can be more beautiful than the solution, how the unknown can be a kind of comfort, only through soft contradictions. And this one, this silent traveler, was a masterclass in subtlety, because its path was precise yet unexplained, its light curve erratic yet consistent, its behavior familiar enough to lure us in but strange enough to unsettle our understanding. And in that space between familiar and strange, a kind of reverence emerged, a scientific awe, the kind that humbles rather than terrifies, that slows the breath and opens the eyes, and you remember that it left faster than it came. No second pass, no return, only that one quote, one that carried not faded, not uniswise, but when curved through our shared sky, and the silence it carried has not faded, not uniwise, because silence is once truly heard, continues to echo long after the source has gone. And so researchers kept listening, kept thinking, kept building models and running simulations, kept wondering aloud whether what we saw was a fragment of ice, a sliver of hydrogen, or something crafted with purpose, a sail, a shell, a shard of something distant and artificial, and though no consensus came, the discussion itself became the story. The community of minds drawn into dialogue with the unknown, and you think now how rare that is, for silence to spark so much sound, for an absence to generate so much presence, and you float in that paradox, that the less we knew, the more we asked. The distance is so vast that even light tires on the journey, and somewhere out there other objects moved like this one, other fragments passed, without being seen, and only this one crossed our path, only this one came close enough to glimpse, and maybe that is the whole point, that it happened at all, that we were watching, that we noticed, and that now we are forever a little more open, a little more ready, and a little more in love with the silence between the known, and the new more open than the love, with the silence between the known, and the new more open, and the love, with the silence between the known, and the new more open, and the love with the silence. You settle deeper into your breath now, body calm, thoughts adrift, and as you lie in this quiet space between sleep and waking, you begin to reflect on what we truly gain from this strange, silent visitor, Oumuamua. And you realize that sometimes the most profound lessons do not come from clear answers or bold discoveries, but from the spaces in between, from the questions that do not close, from the mysteries that stay open, like soft-lit windows in the night. Because Oumuamua gave us more than a puzzle, more than a headline. It gave us a mirror, a way to see the limits of our understanding, and an invitation to grow beyond them. And you begin to feel how powerful that is, how rare it is in science to meet something that doesn't quite fit, something that refuses to settle into the comfortable categories we've built. And in that refusal, a new kind of learning begins. One shaped not by certainty but by humility. And so we learn to listen again. Not with our ears, but with our models, our equations, our instincts sharpened by the absence of signal. And in that silence, we heard possibility. A flicker of something unclassified, a suggestion that the universe still holds forms we have not imagined, motions we have not traced, and stories we have not yet been given the words to tell. And so what we learned was not just about Oumuamua, but about ourselves, how we respond when the data bends, when the path curves away from the known, when the light flickers in a rhythm no object has shown before. And you imagine now the teams of scientists, their eyes tired, their screens filled with graphs and simulations, running calculations again and again, subtracting every known force and still finding something left, something small but persistent, like the faint echo of a whisper in an empty room. And that residual, that remainder, became the root of wonder, and from it grew dozens of theories, some grounded in known physics, some daring to stretch toward the unfamiliar. And that spectrum, that range between reason and imagination, is where curiosity lives. And we lived there for a while, collectively, suspended in shared wonder, and you feel how rare that is, how beautiful, for a world to pause together and ask, what is this? Not with fear, but with fascination. And that too is something we learned, that the universe can still surprise us, can still slip something through the cracks of our expectations. And when it does, we do not collapse, we awaken. We reach further, think wider, feel smaller, and somehow more complete. And you think now of the tools we used, our telescopes and surveys and wide-field scans, our space-based eyes that sweep the sky every night. And you understand that they too learned something, that they proved themselves ready, capable of catching an interstellar traveler before it vanished entirely. And in doing so, they reminded us that we are not blind, not passive, but alert, and that our gaze, even stretched across space, can still be timely, still be sharp. And so we learned that we are prepared for the unknown, or at least more prepared than we imagined. And you remember that before Oumuamua, no one had seen such an object. And after it, we begin to search more carefully. And now, new objects are being discovered, new possibilities opened, as if that one glimpse unlocked a new room in the house of observation. And we stepped inside. And in that room, the walls are made of uncertainty. But the floor is solid, because even if we do not know what it was, we know what it did. It challenged us, it shifted us, it left us curious and inspired. And you think of the scientific papers it sparked, the discussions it ignited, the respectful arguments, the playful speculations, the careful models, the bold guesses. And in all of that something grew. Not a consensus, but a chorus. Not an answer, but a story that continues. And maybe that's what matters most. That science is not always a ladder, but sometimes a spiral. And this spiral winds not just upward, but inward, into deeper questions about how we know what we know, and how we hold what we know. And so, Oumuamua taught us to sit with mystery, not as something to conquer, but as something to welcome, to honor, to explore slowly. And you feel that now, how your own breath has softened, how your thoughts have slowed, how this story does not need to end to feel complete. And you realize that we also learn something more intimate, something about awe, about wonder, about what it feels like to be visited, however briefly, by something older than memory, colder than stone, and quieter than a dream. And that visit left a mark, not on the planet, but on the people, on the minds who looked up and saw it tumbling through the sunlight, fading already, and chose not to forget. And you know now that this is how science and story become the same, that when the data slips away, the meaning remains. And so what we learned is not just that interstellar objects exist, but that even one, seen once, can open 1,000 doors, and the next may be clearer, or stranger, or closer, but it will not be the first, and we will not be the same. And that too is a kind of orbit, a loop not of rock but of reflection. And tonight, you rest gently in that loop, letting it carry you, letting it hold you, not toward conclusion, but toward wonder that lasts. You breathe gently now, deeply wrapped in the stillness that only comes at the edge of sleep. And as you settle further into the quiet, you begin to feel the weight, not of answers, but of questions that remain, soft and wide and endless. Because for all the watching, all the measuring, all the modeling and debate, so much about Oumuamua still rests in the realm of the unknown, and perhaps it always will. And yet that unknowing is not emptiness, it is a fullness of possibility, a quiet sea of things not yet understood, and you begin to drift through it, not with fear or frustration, but with a sense of calm, because the universe is not obligated to explain itself, not all at once, not in tidy sentences, and it is in this mystery that wonder is born, again and again. And so you return to the first question: what was it, really? And the truth is, we don't know, not fully, not with certainty, and we may never know its shape. Whether it was long and thin like a needle or wide and flat like a sail, we may never know. If it was solid or hollow, if it spun slowly or tumbled chaotically, and to such a degree, like so many poultry, we may never know where it came from, which star, which system, which ancient collision might have flung it our way. And that trail, erased by time, remains just beyond our grasp. And we may never know if it was truly natural, a product of physics and randomness, or if it was made, sent, crafted in some distant past by hands not our own, by beings we have never met. And you feel now how vast that not knowing is, not as a gap, but as a space that holds us, like the space between stars, like the breath between thoughts. And in that space you find comfort, because uncertainty does not mean chaos, it means openness. And tonight you lie in that openness, gently held by the questions that remain unanswered, the ones that linger long after the object has vanished from our sky, and you think of all the models that tried to explain its motion. Gravity alone couldn't account for it, nor could simple outgassing, and no tail was seen, no signature of ice or dust, just a smooth curve, just a soft acceleration away from the sun. And that deviation whispered something more, something we could not name, and though some proposed a hydrogen iceberg, and others a solar sail, and others still called it a cosmic fluke, a coincidence of shape and spin, none of the theories fit perfectly, and that imperfect fit became the most honest part of the story, because nature, when seen clearly, is rarely neat, and the universe does not promise clarity, only presence. And so we sat with it, this strange visitor, long after it had gone, revisiting the data, re-examining the assumptions, refining the questions. And you realize now that this is what science truly is, not answers, but attention, not conclusions, but care. And so what remains unknown is not a void, but a mirror, showing us who we are when we don't have all the pieces. And you think now about how often we are taught to seek certainty, to fear ambiguity. But here in the quiet dark, it is the uncertainty that feels most beautiful, most alive, and you let it settle into your breath, the knowing that none knowing is part of the journey. And maybe this is not the last time it will happen. Maybe another object will come, brighter, closer, slower, and we will see it in more detail, hear it more clearly, and learn more from its path. But even then, even with clearer data, more instruments, better timing, there will be things we don't see, don't understand, and that too will be a gift, because the unknown is not a problem to fix. It is a reminder that the universe is always more than we expect, always more than we can hold at once. And as you drift now, slowly and quietly, you begin to feel how that mystery is not just out there, it is in you too. The things you wonder, the questions you carry, the gentle openings in your own understanding. And you feel no need to close them, not tonight, not now. Because there is a kind of peace in letting the story remain unfinished, in letting the silence between facts be part of the melody. And so tonight, as you lie beneath the same stars that watched this object pass, you know that what remains unknown is not a failure of knowledge, but a promise. A promise that we are still listening, still wondering, still capable of awe, and that is enough. That is more than enough to rest inside. You rest with your eyes closed now, your body fully still, but inside you something continues to drift, something slow and searching, and it brings you back to the question that rises after wonder, after confusion, after the silence has been listened to and the facts laid gently down. Why do we keep looking? And the answer does not come in a single line or reason, but in layers, in quiet waves, because we look not only to discover but to remember, to feel once more that smallness that makes the world feel wide again. And you lie now in the softness of that truth, knowing that when Oumuamua passed by, it wasn't just an object that crossed our sky, it was an invitation. A moment when the universe whispered that it was still full of surprises, still full of questions we didn't even know how to ask. And you understand that this is why we build telescopes and launch satellites, why we code algorithms to scan starlight and wait hours for data to arrive from distant spacecraft. Because we know, deep down, that reality stretches beyond the narrow slice we live in, and we are called to lean outward, to search for more, not to own it, not to solve it all, but to be touched by it, to be stirred by it, and maybe, someday, to meet something that changes how we see everything. And even if that never comes, even if the next mystery remains as silent as the last, still we look, because the act of looking expands us, reshapes our boundaries, softens our certainty, and teaches us to live with questions that bloom slowly over years and decades. And you think now of those scientists who watched the data come in, who compared Oumuamua's trajectory to thousands of others, who stared at the light curve and knew something didn't match, and instead of turning away, they turned deeper into the data, letting the discomfort of the unknown lead them forward. And you realize that this is not just science, it's a kind of devotion, a gentle stubbornness that says, there is more, even if we cannot see it yet. And so we keep scanning the sky, keep listening to the quiet, not out of fear, not out of urgency, but out of love, a quiet reverence for the beauty of things beyond our grasp. And as you drift further into the dark, you begin to see that looking is not only about what we find, it is about how we change in the process, how our minds stretch, how our fragments of something we've never named, and in that stretch, carved by strangers, or fragments of something we've never named, and in that stretch, something grows, and you feel it now, even here, in stillness. How wide your thoughts have become, how deep your breath flows, how calm your body feels even while your mind is carried far away. And that too is why we keep looking, because looking takes us somewhere, even if our feet never move. And that somewhere is not just out there but within. And as you think of Oumuamua again, you feel no need to reach a conclusion, no need to decide if it was alien or ice, if it was technology or chance, because it did its work simply by being different, by moving as it moved, by leaving questions in its wake instead of certainty. And you think of all the times humans have stood on cliffs, or mountaintops, or rooftops, and stared at the stars, long before there were telescopes or theories or models, and how something inside us has always wanted to look up, always wanted to find our place in something larger. And still today, with all our machines and data, that feeling remains. Quiet, humble, and bright, but for meaning, for connection, for a sense that we are part of a story so much older and wider than we know. And though we may never know its full shape, we are written into it simply by the act of noticing, of caring, of wondering gently in the dark. And that is why we keep looking, not for certainty but for perspective, not to find something we already expect, but to be surprised. And you let that feeling settle into you now, soft and deep, and with it comes a kind of peace. Not because you've reached an end, but because you've found a way to rest inside the middle of a question. And that is where all the most beautiful discoveries begin. You rest now at the very edge of the journey, the sky above you dark and endless, your thoughts quiet and open, your breath steady and slow. And as you lie in this peaceful space, you begin to wonder, not about what has passed, but about what comes next. Because if one object from beyond the stars could drift through our solar system silently, unnoticed until it had already begun to leave, then there must be others, other travelers still on their way, still tumbling through the interstellar dark. And this thought does not stir urgency but comfort, a reminder that the universe is still in motion, still writing stories in silence, still sending whispers in the form of light curves and orbital paths, and data streams that arrive like messages we don't yet know how to read. And you imagine the next visitor now, not with a roar or a signal, but with the same gentle unpredictability, slipping through the sky one morning, appearing in a scan like a flicker, a variation, a brightness that should not change but does. And again, someone will notice. Someone watching a screen or reviewing a pattern, and they will pause, scroll back, look again, and know that something is here, something not from here. And this time maybe we will be just a little more ready, our eyes more alert, our models more refined, our minds more willing to hold the space between possibilities without rushing to fill it. And you think about what that next object might be. Larger, slower, closer, perhaps even brighter, maybe spinning with a more familiar rhythm, or displaying shapes we have never seen. And it could be natural again, a fragment of some far-off system that shattered long before our sun was born. Or it could be something crafted, something sent, or something lost. And though we do not know, we are looking, and that looking creates a thread, a bridge, a connection between us and the unseen. And as you lie here, you feel the pull of that connection, how even without movement you are reaching, participating in a long human tradition of looking up and wondering what might be coming next. And you imagine the observers who will one day track the new object, running their software, gathering their measurements, arguing softly about origins and anomalies. And you understand that in that world, in that wonder, the story continues, not because it repeats, but because it expands, each new piece folding into the great cosmic mosaic, each new finding softening the boundaries of what we thought was possible. And you feel how gentle that unfolding is, not a rush, not a storm, but a rhythm, like waves. And you breathe with it now, slow and calm, and you know that even if the next visitor reveals no signal, no certainty, its presence will still teach us something, not just about the object itself, but about ourselves, our readiness, our patience, our capacity to sit inside questions and listen. And you realize that this too is the purpose of such arrivals, not to solve everything, but to remind us how beautiful it is not to know, how rare it is to be surprised, and how precious it is to share that surprise together. And you think of all the people who will read the headlines, who will follow the updates, who will sit under the stars wondering whether something ancient just passed overhead. And in that shared curiosity, something soft and powerful begins to grow, something that stretches beyond the screen or the paper, something that lives in the quiet places between fact and feeling. And you let yourself rest in that space now, trusting that the next story will come when it's ready, that the next mystery will not arrive on command but on its own strange timing, and that we will be there, some of us watching, some of us dreaming, some of us simply pausing in the night to look up and wonder. And that will be enough, that will be everything, because the sky does not rush, and neither must we. And as you drift now towards sleep, you carry with you not a final answer, but an open door, and behind it the hush of stars and the quiet promise that the next visitor is already on its way.